Class warfare hitting America in a very ugly way. Some residents in California's Silicon Valley on edge this week after threatening graffiti was spray painted on several homes and a car like these, bashing the so-called %. And this one saying, kill people, hateful, nasty stuff, of course, carried out by thugs. But are politicians who use class warfare rhetoric partly to blame for all this? Mike Ozanian, what do you think?
David, class warfare is bad for the country, period. History has shown that politicians that pit the electorate against each other can use that sometimes to get elected in the short term, but in the long term, it's bad for the country. Just look at the $45 trillion in unfunded liabilities that has become because of the promises that politicians have made to pit various classes of this electorate against one another. It's very, very bad for the economy.
So, Bill, the more you use this kind of class warfare rhetoric, the more of these ugly things are likely to happen.
Perhaps, but I don't blame politicians for fomenting anti-capitalist attitudes and class envy. I blame the people who get to our impressionable citizens at a younger age, the school teachers. My younger daughter once came home from the 5th grade with the assignment to list 5 ways that John D. Rockefeller was evil. The fact that he made a commodity more affordable to the middle class was irrelevant because he was in the 1%, so he had to be evil.
Yeah, but Steve, obviously politicians are not calling for people to be killed or exiled or anything like that, but does that rhetoric kind of lead to this ugly stuff?
Yes, it does, and especially when you target individuals or target groups like the Tea Parties and then ignore other groups. And the real scandal here, David, is why the mainstream media hasn't been all over this and create a culture where you police these people. You step over the line, you're going to get called for it. Instead, the president, community organizer, leads the charge. He knows nothing but conflict.
Well, Rich Karlgaard, I think it's going to be a cold day in hell when the media starts coming in to try to help in this situation. But do politicians bear some of the blame?
Well, sure, we have a president who's sneeringly used the phrase billionaires and millionaires to describe people who work hard and achieve a lot. But, you know, this has a lot of bad actors, unions who've been egging the Google bus that goes from San Francisco to Google headquarters, and then even some of the accomplished rich people are fanning the flames. Tom Perkins, the venture capitalist, went way over the top when he compared some of this complaint against the 1% to the treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany. So that really did fan the flames out here and probably led to this most recent graffiti incident.
And Rick, whenever you set up a side where it's us versus them, even though we're all Americans, us versus them, that leads to bad things, doesn't it?
Look, I mean, let's review what's really happening here. I have great sympathy for the people in that neighborhood. It's a terrible thing. There's always going to be vandals. But this is what happens when there's a public discussion about something, and there's been a public discussion. Look, you have to ask yourself the question, if we're covering this, where were we when political statements made against gay people, which resulted in lots of graffiti in West Hollywood, California? Where were we? Why didn't we cover that story?
We were probably protesting that, Rick. We don't appreciate it when anybody threatens anybody else.
But we didn't cover that.
We did indeed cover a lot of that on Fox News Channel. But Sabrina, the fact is, Rick says it's a discussion. I'm just wondering if it goes over the boundary of a discussion of rich people and poor people and the split between the two. For example, look at the Romney campaign. I mean, the whole thing was about how he was not fit to be president because he was rich, because he was a rich, greedy businessman.
That's right. And one of the most disheartening parts of the Democratic Party today is that they do pit Americans against each other, women against men, wealthy against poor, you know, young against old. And I think that one of the things, if we want to have a larger conversation, is to talk about what is bigotry. Bigotry is not simply contained to mean, you know, discriminating against someone for their race or their religion or their sexual orientation. It's literally the discrimination against group, and in this case, Democrats and progressive groups have really targeted those who have worked hard and who have been successful. And I just got a tweet right before we taped this show about from one of our followers who showed me a white privilege conference. These were academics who are pushing back against anything that sets white people apart, and they're pointing to wealth.
Mike, the fact is, it's when you blame any group for all your problems. I mean, that's what all of the dictators over history have done. We don't want to slide into that here.
No, and as to the economics of this, again, What really bothers me about this is when you look at the rich in the top 1%, well, look at who's gotten enormously wealthy lately. Look at the founders of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. These are all people that are leading this country's technological change, the global technological change. They're in the 1%, but they're also the job creators out there. We want more of these types of people, David, not less.
Absolutely. Coming up as Son of God hits big screens across America, is Hollywood about to make a big right turn?
Are you the Son of God?